Right. All right. Well, thank you all for having me. I'm excited about this topic. I think it's fun. And, you know, we often hear about these tips for treats and different things more around Christmas and, you know, the other holidays. So I think it's kind of fun to find out some other ideas here to get some healthier options in where can make this a little bit easier because, as you know, we're kind of beginning this 3-month period, if not longer, of all the sweets, all the different things that we maybe need to aim to have less of. And so it's important for us to make some smart decisions. So we'll just go ahead and get started here. All right, so it's tricks for treating yourself. So, you know, the biggest thing that we want to make sure is finding some different tricks that we can work on to get some of the things that we might enjoy the flavors of and making some variations that are going to be a little bit healthier for us. All right, so the biggest thing is you can have your cake and eat it too. So this isn't a time when we need to be avoiding all of things. You know, we can always tend to make some smarter decisions and hopefully with some steps here, which are things that we've heard and talked about multiple times, but it's always important. I tell patients often that every month, every few months, it's always important to kind of check yourself a little bit, kind of see where we're at, what goals we have, what things that have tend to maybe slack over the past month or so that we need to make sure we can stay on track with. So, but it is possible that you can have things that you enjoy, even when they might not be, quote, as healthy. So it's important to remember. So the trick or treat, you know, what we want to watch out for, and we'll go through each of these, but we want to watch out for sugar, fat, and empty calories. You know, the sugars, you know, remember, that there can be a lot of inflammation and different things, but you know, these are where the sneaky calories can come in. So we want to watch out for sugar, fat, and empty calories, and we'll talk about those things just a little bit more. It's important to remember to plan your treats, and also remember to hydrate. You know, adequate hydration is very important. Making sure you're moving, you know, obviously there is, you'll see here, and I don't want this number to sound daunting, but any type of movement is going to be very beneficial. And then important to stay on track. You know, this is not a 3-month treat. This is, you know, can be a day or a meal or something of that nature. So these are kind of important things that you want to watch out for. And I think that these are important steps to always be focused on when we're in situations that might have some of these sneaky situations. So watch out for sugar. It's important to remember that sugar, simple sugars, this is your white flour, white sugar, candy, soda pops, this causes inflammation. So we want to aim to minimize that. When we're speaking of cancer specifically, simple sugars are things we want to try to minimize as much as possible. I think the word avoid or eliminate can be very difficult and something that hard to achieve. So, but there are patients that do a fabulous job just strictly eliminating them entirely, and that's fantastic and wonderful. But, you know, minimizing, I think, is an important thing. Also, and then one big point that I want to make sure to note is we are entering in, we have been through this 1.5, 2-year season of very concerned about our immune systems with COVID and such. But, you know, remembering that the fall is the time when there are more germs, there are more things along. So minimizing that inflammation is what keeps our immune system strong. So it's very important. And another thing to note on sugar, and we'll get down to this in the bottom, is the artificial sweetener. So we'll answer that question here in just a minute. Fat calories, remembering that fat calories can sometimes, your saturated fats especially, can be highly inflammatory as well. So focusing on good fat calories, if you're going to have any things that are, you know, good fats, your omegas, your omega-3s specifically are going to be important, but your saturated fats, things that are solid at room temperature, as far as fat calories go, are just going to be more inflammation. And remembering that for every gram of fat, there is 9 calories. So it's important that you're getting a lot more calories per gram than you are with carbohydrates and protein. So those calories can sneak in really quickly. So there can be some alternatives to some of the fat sources as well. And then processed ingredients. This is where a lot of your packaged items, you're going to find a lot of trans fats. You're going to find a lot of words you can't pronounce, you know, and these are all things that your body has to process. And then the biggest trigger, you know, sometimes we think if we replace with artificial sweeteners, that we're less calorie, so it's going to be better. But there is so much research out there now indicating how artificial sweeteners can oftentimes, and more proven than not, to be worse than your regular sugar on the body. It can mess with your gut microbiome. It also can be more highly addictive. So we're going to want more and more and more of these things. So essentially, trying to steer away from artificial sweeteners as much as possible is very, very important. So remembering to plan, we know when our gatherings most of the time are going to be. So making sure that you're keeping track of when those are going to be, planning accordingly, and focusing on, kind of really revving up in regards to more vegetables, keeping things as clean as possible, noting that there might be a little bit of some treats that get snuck in to some of these events. So making sure that you're planning things appropriately. And another big trick that we oftentimes forget is to maybe consider eating before you go to a gathering. I want you to enjoy some things, but maybe it's an opportunity where you have like a small appetizer plate of some things versus, the big plate that you have, because you're already full. You had a good balanced meal before you went with non-starchy vegetables, the rainbow that like Addie had, all of those different things that can be really beneficial. And it can help you from overeating at some of the gatherings or having some of those sneaky items that can just add unnecessary calories. And then hydrate. I think this is extremely, extremely important. We often forget to hydrate during these times, and noting that a lot of, these sneaky foods can also be high in salt, high in a variety of different things. So remembering hydrating fluids are going to be your water, decaffeinated teas, and even if your infused waters or something like that. Again, we want to stay away from, any of your artificially sweetened items that are even 0 calories as a form of hydration. Even your electrolyte-based drinks, again, your water is always going to be best in most situations. So there's a lot of calculations out there of how much water people need. And also, as we're going into the winter months, we often forget about hydration. Often we do a better job in the summer because we're hot, we're sweating, but we need hydration just as much. It's very beneficial for your gut health, preventing issues of constipation, all sorts of things like that. So focusing on being well hydrated, keeping water with you, even at some of these gatherings as well, or when maybe some of these sneaky items come in, you may tend to stay fuller and then you might not eat as much as well. So keeping those around. Your decaffeinated teas, sometimes people don't like hot tea. And I always say, you can even steep the tea and then put it over ice. There's so many nice opportunities for teas out there. You just want to focus on the decaffeinated options as a form of hydration. And we've talked about infused waters so many times, but there's so many great options that you can do from that standpoint. And then moving, the goal is 150 minutes a week. That is a goal. Sometimes that is just not achievable, but remembering even simple things that can be done, even in small increments. If you have 10 minutes, use those 10 minutes to move, get your dog on a walk, park at the end of the parking lot, whatever is safe for you to be able to do to get more steps, even potentially taking the stairs. But this is another part of planning. If you're going to have an event, maybe you do a little bit of, or you fit in a little bit more of that exercise. And also the benefits of exercise is that you're building lean body mass, which is helpful for metabolism and everything. And also for people with diabetes, sometimes we talk about movement being very beneficial around some of these sneaky situations, because activity can, for certain situations, can act like insulin. So it's going to open up, it can help bring your blood sugars down, things like that, which can be beneficial. And then of course, there's so much research and data to indicate how being physically active is also very helpful for your immune system. So we want to make sure we're moving. And then focus on staying on track. This is not a 3-month break like we talked about. So if you have that event, allow yourself that and then get back on track for the next meal. It's not the event's on Friday, so I'll restart on Monday and I'm going to do everything that I shouldn't do all weekend long. it's important to get back on track as soon as you can for all of your goals and kind of take that time to reassess, the importance of healthy eating the best you can. So focusing and all of that may be, you might have a buddy that you can talk to and keeps you on track, everything that's important. So without further ado, we'll get into the recipes. So this particular recipe, there is a lot of pumpkin in some of these recipes, or some of the fall items. So this particular recipe is from cancerfighters.com, and I did share the website at the end of this presentation, so you guys can use that link. And like I said, all of these recipes in this particular format, I did send to Addie, so she can send those to you, Beth and Joan, if you're interested. So this can be good. This is kind of a take on an ice cream sandwich. I understand that, we still have some simple items in here, but there's all kinds of different opportunities that you can bring some, healthier items in. So we have graham crackers. It's important to note that there are gluten-free graham crackers out there. There's all kinds of different options here. And, I think even there could be opportunities where you could only have one layer of the graham cracker. So you're again limiting some of that, those particular items can be good. So it's a can of pumpkin puree, and then vanilla frozen yogurt. So there are great frozen yogurts out there that are going to have less ingredients, that can be great. And you could even take, potentially your own vanilla yogurts and some different things that could be good to try to incorporate. Teaspoon of cinnamon and then ground ginger. So that just adds some of that nice flavors that we're used to with the pumpkin. Even sometimes we'll add some pumpkin pie spice if you don't have both of these particular options. You're just going to line the baking pan with graham crackers, and then, making and set that aside. In a large mixing bowl, you have the pumpkin and frozen yogurt. So again, we're doing the frozen yogurt instead of the regular higher calorie, higher fat regular ice cream. There are even, I want to just note here, you could also do like a coconut ice cream, some of your dairy-free alternatives that can be nice to incorporate. So you have spread your pumpkin mixture over the graham crackers, and then put your other layer of graham crackers if you choose to do that, and then keep it in the freezer for about an hour. And then you can cut and kind of make a fall version of ice cream sandwiches. Pumpkin chia pudding. I loved this one. This is really excellent. We've talked about chia seeds and how beneficial they can be in regards to omega-3s. So you've got some omegas brought in here. This is vegan option as well. So you've got, you can use your form of milk that you might prefer, almond milk, cashew milk, or oat milk. You've got your pumpkin puree. We're using a natural sweetener as maple syrup. There are some alternatives out there, but this can be a good option as far as a natural sweetness. Almond butter here, if you don't prefer almond butter, there was some notes that you could do cashew butter if you would prefer that. You have your pumpkin pie spice, some vanilla, and then, sorry, my work phone is ringing, so I'm gonna let that keep going so I don't accidentally answer. And then you can do some coconut whipped cream, chopped pecans, or even a granola if you would prefer to do that. So any of those things, you don't have to do that, but you're gonna stir together the chia seeds, milk, pumpkin, maple syrup, almond butter, and the pumpkin pie spice all together in a bowl. And you're gonna let that soak for about 5 minutes. You're gonna stir it again to break up any clumps and divide the mixture evenly. So you can put this into mason jars, however you prefer, whatever container. One thing that I do want to note that is important is that you want to make sure that your chia seeds are pretty fresh. And the reason is sometimes they don't soak up the moisture as well and give kind of that gelatinous or kind of pudding texture that you're looking for if they're a little bit older. It just kind of depends. There were some notes that certain brands may be better or worse. It just kind of depends, and you guys probably have some good ones that you have already found to be good. So when you're ready to enjoy, you can top the chia pudding with that coconut whipped cream if you would like. Sprinkle with cinnamon, you can only, and those things, and then the granola or pecans, whatever your preference might be. And you can store any leftovers for up to 3 days. So those options, and it's nice to kind of make maybe a servings of this, and they can be kind of a nice breakfast for you. There are some variations of this as well that you could do, like overnight oats, that could be similar, so all kinds of different opportunities here. And then there also potentially could be opportunities to add maybe some vanilla protein powders or something like that to give this a little bit more protein. There are plant-based options out there that you could add to kind of further enhance and make this a little bit more protein rich. This is my favorite recipe of this. I had a friend tell me about this and I tried it and I think it's great. So we are so used to Snickers, and maybe not everyone likes this. This is, the peanuts, there could be some allergies here. But the idea that you have all ingredients that you can pronounce, which is fantastic. And then you can get even the vegan chocolate chips if you wanted to do something like that. So I understand there are some simple sugars here still, but at least you're getting some natural sweeteners as well. So you're going to add your dates to a food processor and process until it forms a smooth paste. There's some fantastic recipes using dates as a sweetener, as an alternative, and a lot of options. So this can be great. Add water or almond milk if your dates are too dry. So, and just kind of keep getting till you get to that paste consistency, and then you're going to set that aside. You're going to melt your chocolate chips for 20-second intervals in the microwave and kind of stir occasionally. You don't want to, potentially kind of quote burn them in the microwave. You could also do this as a double boiler on the stove if you prefer that over the microwave. And then you're going to scoop a spoonful into your muffin cups. You see the muffin options there. You could even, some people will use the silicone muffin containers as well. So it just kind of depends on what you prefer. And scoop and do that in the bottom of the liner. Add 1 to 2 teaspoons of the date, pass to the middle of each muffin liner, and then top with a few peanuts. And then, you're going to add another teaspoon or a little spoonful of your chocolate again on top. And you're going to place in the refrigerator and allow it to cool completely. So a very nice alternative to your Snicker bars, which I think is great. And it's just reminding you down there at the bottom, if your dates are extra dry, you can also kind of soak them in water and then discard the water after you've soaked them if they need to be kind of perked up a little bit. Chocolate avocado mousse. So this is a fun opportunity for kind of a mousse or pudding, to bring in. So, and also using some of the cocoa powder or the 70% cocoa baking chocolate, you're maybe not needing as much. And so you're getting that good flavor. This recipe as well with some cancer fighters. So you have your 2 very ripe avocados. You have your baking chocolate melted. You have your cocoa powder, almond milk, agave nectar, vanilla, and cinnamon. And then you can do a pinch of sea salt. So in a food processor, combine the avocados, melted chocolate, cocoa powder, maple syrup, essentially all of your ingredients, and puree until creamy. And then spoon the mousse into 4 small ramekins and chill for at least an hour. So this is kind of a nice opportunity as a pudding or something. I don't want to note this. I know these are processed items, but there's always the, kind of dirt cups that are this time of year as well. So at least you're getting maybe healthier of the pudding. And, you could always kind of spice things up with some of those ingredients just to make things fun and, incorporate the kids' items as well. Chili. This is always, the time of year when people want to do maybe some additional chili. So this, I understand that this ingredient list is super, super long. So I don't want anyone to feel defeated by this. But what I love about it is that it has so many vegetables and so many components that are super, super good for us. And it's going to be, it can be even leaner than what this is noted. This does call for ground beef, but I feel like in chilies and different things, you could even do your ground turkey and be even leaner if you're eliminating red meat. But as far as any meats go, we do want to make sure that we're focusing on the antibiotic-free, hormone-free options the best we can. But this particular recipe includes, you know, onions, celery, bell peppers, sweet potatoes, which I think is awesome. You've got your meat, your jalapeno, garlic, tomato paste, your chili powder, cumin, oregano, paprika, and your crushed tomatoes, and then your beef broth and your bay leaf. So, and then there's some note of some garnishes if you wanted to do that. Garnishes as well. Sometimes people like to have kind of quote sour cream on some of their chili. So you could do, I always want to remind people of the plain Greek yogurt as a 1-for-1 for sour cream. So don't forget that if you'd like to do that. There are even dairy-free options of your plain yogurts out there that can be really excellent and add some additional creaminess. So the directions for that are all here. It does use a Dutch oven. You know, doing the oil and then softening all of your vegetables, you know, cooking your ground beef, or we could, like I said, you can do the ground turkey, or this opportunity here, you don't even have to have meat. You could do a vegan option and just eliminate the meat. And this could be a packed, you know, veggie chili, which can be great. Your jalapeno, garlic, tomato paste, and then adding your tomatoes. And, you know, you can store the leftovers in a sealed container in the fridge for up to 5 days, and then you can freeze in an airtight container for up to 3 months. So I would encourage, if you're going to make this, that, you know, you maybe even, you know, if you do like it, you know, maybe the next time that you kind of double up and freeze some, it's a nice opportunity if you're ever wanting to share meals or take to somebody that, you know, if you have it frozen, that it kind of makes your, all the work that kind of goes into this recipe a little bit worth it. But you know, remembering that, you know, there's so many chilies out there where you see that fat film on top and all of those things. Those are just where those sneaky high fat, you know, calories can come in. And this is just a great recipe where at least we're kind of a one pot meal, getting all of our antioxidants, essentially making that rainbow in a different way, which is good. And then finally, just have fun, and you'll see that recipe link is there. And there, what I loved about the Cancer Fighters website is that, you know, you're getting a variety of, they have all kinds of the different categories, you know, your main dishes, your desserts, your drinks, you know, different things like that, which can be really nice. So they've categorized it well. Another great website that has seasonal recipes, as well as the American Institute of Cancer Research. They have a lot of great in-season recipes out there. So another opportunity for you all to take a look. So anyway, I know it was kind of short, but hopefully you found some treats in the matter of tricks and some different variations. And I encourage you to take these ideas and, you know, make your own spin on them. You know, eliminate, add, you know, do whatever you prefer, or maybe it sparks some other ideas for you to go searching for, because there's so many options out there. So